I'm going to show you exactly how to take the stress, confusion, and chaos out of your business by systemizing it in 5 steps. I've used this strategy to systemize over 141 organizations in more than a dozen industries across the world. It doesn't matter what company you have or what industry you're in, the process is the same. Systemizing your business is like building a giant puzzle. Looking at other business systems is like choosing the puzzle pieces that you want to put together. Now, it's a bad idea to start from scratch when designing your systems. So first, I'm going to show you how to draw inspiration from other systems. If you don't get inspiration before designing your systems, you'll waste hours of your life designing a system from scratch that you could have copied and pasted in 5 seconds if you just took the time to look at other successful systems. You just don't know what you don't know. So we'll help you learn what you don't know by reviewing detailed system plans, which are based on real systemized businesses, prompting AI correctly, and by directing you to additional resources to inspire you on how you should be systemizing your business. Second, we are going to cover the best practices on taking raw detailed system notes. Taking raw notes is chaotic. It's like buying a giant puzzle and throwing all the pieces on the ground. Yes, it's chaos, but at least you have the pieces now in front of you so you can begin putting things together. Without good notes, it's like trying to build a giant puzzle with a blindfold on. It just feels impossible, which is how most people feel when trying to systemize their business. So keep in mind, you never technically finish any of these steps. You just choose to abandon each step at some point. That point should be the point of diminishing returns, where increased effort yields progressively smaller results. You have to understand that each system exists on a spectrum as to how well it was created, as opposed to being created right or wrong, which is unfair language to use because it's just too vague in its binary thinking. How well your system is built largely depends on how well you perform each systemization step. I say this to say, don't spend forever on each step. Just do your best and move forward. I've seen 1,000 ways to take raw notes. I'm going to show you the best and easiest way to do it. Third, we'll use your raw notes to build your system plan according to best practices. Without a system plan, you'll work for your system instead of your system working for you. This style of documentation is the best way to plan and represent your system, not a flowchart, even if you are a visual learner, not a screenshot by screenshot PowerPoint presentation, not a crazy advanced UI UX flow document. These methods are deeply flawed because they take too much time to build. They are hard to interpret without a detailed explanation, which defeats the purpose of making these system plans to begin with. They don't have the level of detail necessary to inform a system action plan, and they are a huge pain to modify over time as changes are inevitably made. And they leave you with more work because you'll still have to create SOPs after making these kinds of documents because they don't have enough transferable detail. My method of making system plans is easy to create, is easy to modify, is easy for others to understand, and has the level of detail necessary to become both a standard operating procedure that you can use to train others, and it will essentially become your system implementation plan, leaving you with less work. That's the most important point, by the way, is the level of detail. You can't build a successful system, then show others how to use it without clarity, and clarity requires detail. NASA creates systems that are 1,000 times more complex than your business. How do you think they go about it? Well, we don't have to guess. They write out requirements, and they've released written requirements on writing requirements. Now, I find it really interesting that some of the most advanced systems were initially written requirements, and that written requirements serves as a guide during a system's development and allows everyone to get on the same page quickly. Flowcharts, screenshots, videos, and other visual aids can be used or added to support a written system plan, but they aren't required. Fourth, we'll talk about building an action plan. That way you know exactly how to create your system and in what order. Without a clear action plan, your system will never become a reality. It's important here to reference Gall's law, which states all complex systems that work evolved from simpler systems that worked. If you want to build a complex system that works, build a simpler system first and then improve it over time. Here we'll determine the must-haves of the initial working system. We want to focus on the 20% of your system that we should build to yield 80% of the system's benefit. Think of this like you think of a minimum viable product. It's the system you need in order to get started. It's nothing more, nothing less. There's an infinite number of things we could do to build and enhance a system. Making an action plan is about determining what should be done and in the order it should be done. Building an action plan is about allocating a finite number of resources, people, time, energy, money, etc., to an infinite number of options. Finally, I'll show you what it is like to actually execute an action plan and keep track of the system's development. That way you know exactly what happens when you execute your plan correctly. Have you drawn inspiration from other systems? If you answer no, or if you don't know, then watch this section. If you answered yes, skip to the next section, because this section is about drawing inspiration from other systems. That way you aren't starting your system from scratch, and so you can begin with the end in mind. So we're going to start with showing you examples of other systems. Now, the question becomes, what's the best way to represent a system before it's actually built? And so we touched on this a bit, but the best way to do it is in a bulleted format. The reason why is now I can very clearly outline my customer journey. So my customer journey here is being outlined with these bullets. Now you can create this documentation with different levels of complexity. You can see that my customer journey here is pretty simple. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different steps. But you can also see that within each step are all the other sub-steps that comprise the system. But this is a very easy way to see things at a high level and then to zoom in to different parts of the process or the system itself. Now, here's the important thing to understand. This is the philosophy or the idea that drives everything that we're doing. It's from Michael E. Gerber. He wrote the book E-Myth. It's a really popular business book. Now, the quote from Michael is organize around business functions, which is a group of processes that a company uses to describe its work, not people. Build systems within each business function. Let systems run the business and people run the systems. People come and go, but the system remains constant. Okay, so this idea of build systems within each business function, let systems run the business and people run the systems. How do we design the system? Well, you can see here, this is a very detailed way for you to design your systems. So first, you start with the journey. And the reason you start with your journey, and why, by the way, when I say journey, all I'm saying is who are you serving? Most likely, if you're a business, you're serving a customer. What does the customer journey look like? If that's the person ultimately that you're supporting, first design the steps that they're going to take or outline the steps that they're going to take through their journey. So again, what this would actually look like is you just taking out, creating a new document and just saying, what are the steps that they need to take throughout their journey? So first, for example, in a B2B situation, right? You're doing business with another business. You have a prospect that would show sales intent. What would that actually entail? Someone submits a contact us form, sends a text, sends an email, calls in, requests a meeting, requests a proposal, requests a quote, or expresses legitimate sales interest in purchasing your products or services. What that will be determines on the business that you are in. What determines showing serious sales intent? Here's some examples to give you ideas. And again, that's why we're doing this. This is to inspire you. This is an example of how a typical B2B organization will operate, the typical B2B system. Okay, so first a prospect will show sales interest, then a prospect books an initial sales call, then the prospect is qualified, then the prospect signs a proposal, and then the customer pays, right? That's a typical B2B flow for a sales process. Now you could expand this. You could add further bullet points to go upstream in the process for marketing. And you could also expand this going downstream of the process to show fulfillment for whatever you are selling, whether it be a product or a service. But the idea that I want to get across is you can very quickly look at this process step by step and glean something that you want to steal and put into your own process instead of inventing it from scratch. Okay, so this is meant to give you ideas. The nice thing about this structure is you can easily expand different parts of the customer journey so that you can see all the sub-steps that support customer journey. So going back to this little diagram here, you've got the journey. The customer journey is the thing that ultimately informs your processes. Why take the time to design a process that doesn't support your customer journey? This is where the money is. This is where you should focus. Your processes should be about supporting your customer journey, but your journey should inform your processes, right? So that's why we've structured this the way that we have. These different sections, first and foremost, are the customer journey steps. And then everything in here are the processes that are informed by the customer journey. Or in other words, these are the processes that help move the customer journey forward. And then we've got our technology. So technology is mixed in here. For example, technology or team member will create a lead in Zoho CRM with the lead status sales ready. So technology are the different tools that you're going to use within a process to support the customer journey. So again, your journey informs your processes, and then your processes should inform your technology, not the other way around. Some people are like, well, I got technology, so I could support my processes. And that's a good thing to do. But the thing you got to understand is you don't want to work for the technology that you purchase. You want your technology to work for you. So the way that you turn the tables there, and most people are working for their technology. They're like, whatever the technology does, we're just going to do it. Yes, there's a baseline level of training that you need to get for CRM software or any other software or tool that you're using in your business. But ultimately, you should be using the technology for what's in your best interest for your customer, for supporting your customer journey. And so the way that you properly use technology, because most tech these days have so many options and features that you can use, none of which are worth using unless it supports your processes that support your customer journey. So again, the thing that we're trying to identify here is what's the starting point? What are we going to start with? We don't even know where to start. Start by outlining your customer journey. Make it simple. Just go through the different hoops they have to hop through in order to go from, and this is a sales process example, right? So you can do this for any process. This is just an example for you. I'm also going to show you a B2C example. Okay, you'll notice this is a little different. Social media visitor clicks on the link to a website. Social media user visits the web page. Website visitor subscribes to a newsletter. Website visitor purchases a product. Customer fills out a review. Okay. So the nice thing is I can just go through here and expand all of this, and we can actually start to see some detail on what it would take to get this off the ground. So the nice thing that about this style of documentation is you can also add lots of notes. I think this is really critical. It gets really confusing really fast when creating different styles of documentation on how you're supposed to add required detail. So notes allows you a space in a document to actually give critical details related to different parts of the customer journey or the process. Now, you don't have to be super strict here with making sure that the leftmost indented bullet is the customer journey, but it is helpful. It's helpful to be able to easily say, what's the customer journey? And then for each step in the customer journey to expand it and say, okay, these are the different statuses that we're going to be using. Here's the different notes or cases as to why we're going to be using those things. This is just a structure that works. So I'm going to link to these in the description below so that you can take a look at them. You can make a copy for yourself, and then you can go through these and determine what parts of these processes you either want to steal outright, or you can just use these to inform your processes to give you inspiration. That way you understand how people have successfully documented their processes before and designed their system plan. Next thing here, you can also use ChatGPT or the AI of your choice. You can prompt AI in order to give you an idea of what you should be doing. Okay, so you'll notice here that essentially what I've done is I've just copied the process that we were looking at before for B2B, and I prompted ChatGPT. I said, I run a Zoho consultancy that helps others to implement Zoho. Propose a detailed system plan in a bullet point format on how my system should work. Use this system as a reference, and then I just pasted this system. Now, there might be a million other ways to do this with ChatGPT, but this is a great way to give ChatGPT some context through an example. So ChatGPT doesn't have to guess and make this from scratch, has an example to run off of. You can, again, make a copy of the documents I just showed you previously and then use it inside of ChatGPT just like I'm doing here. And you can replace this with your own. I run a blank organization that helps others to blank. Propose a detailed system plan in a bullet format on how my system should work. And again, you're not going to use this. You're not just going to copy and paste this, but you'll use it for inspiration and be like, I didn't think about this. Different entry points for leads. Okay, got it. Different lead statuses that I hadn't considered. Interesting. These will all help you to get an idea of what you should do. And again, the idea is we don't want you to start from a blank sheet of paper. It's a bad idea always to start from scratch. You should build off the shoulder of giants. More likely than not, people solve the problems that you're trying to solve with your system. Why not take advantage of that and steal what you can, steal like an artist, and put your processes together based on inspiration instead of doing it from scratch? You may think the noble thing to do is start from scratch. I think that's a bad idea. It wastes a ton of time, and then you end up trying to recreate the wheel instead of taking advantage of what other people have done, which is what you should do, okay? And when I say taking advantage, I'm not saying like at their own expense, but if you can get inspiration from what other people have done, that's a positive thing, not a negative thing. Okay, also, if you want to see these systems in action, you may be like, I'm a visual learner and this isn't visual enough for me. Well, this is good enough. I promise this is the only way to properly detail and inform an implementation. It needs to be in a written format. Yes, you can use visual aids to support your written requirements, written action plan, written system design, but sometimes it's helpful for people to have a visual on what a system might look like in action. And so I have these different videos here that you can use to see a visual of what it looks like for these systems in a demonstration. So you can see I have this video, it's Zoho CRM demonstration. I'll be adding more videos here as well, but this just shows you what these different systems would actually look like inside of technology. We're using technology to interface with the buyer journey or to support the buyer journey. So sometimes it's good to see someone actually walk through all these steps in detail. You can see these videos are very detailed. I try not to skip out on the details. I think the more vague these videos are, the less helpful they are for people. So take a look at these two. This is another way for you to get inspired on how you should design your system. Do you have detailed notes on the processes you want to systemize? If you answer no, or if you don't know, then you need to watch this section on raw notes. If you answered yes, then you can skip this section altogether. Okay, so the whole idea of this section of the video is we want to get the chaos out of your head and we want to get it onto paper. So open up a document and start taking notes. Now, if you went through the inspiration section, this is where you would have copied and pasted different things that inspired you, okay? And these are notes that I've actually taken with clients that I've worked with during discovery. And the whole idea is that we could get all the detail out of their head and onto paper in a semi-structured format. Now, this isn't perfect, but if you relate it to building a puzzle, at least we have the puzzle pieces in front of us now so that we can work with something. The question here is, how do we represent all the chaotic thoughts that we have related to the system that we're trying to build? Now, it's going to look different based on your situation, but I want to show you this cascaded notes format so that you can dissect for yourself by looking at it what you need to do, what notes you need to take. You feel so much better after you just take a bunch of notes in a bulleted format on what you're trying to do. A lot of the reasons we feel unnecessary stress with everything we're trying to accomplish is because we don't get it out of our head. And so get it out of your head, get it on a paper. This is not a system plan. These are just the raw notes, the raw detailed notes that will inform a plan. Now you may be thinking to yourself, well, Drew, what level of notes should I be taking during raw notes? And this is a really hard question to answer. If you feel like there's a detail that if you get to a point where you're like, should it be more detailed? Yes, get more detailed. But over time, you're going to have to put less and less detail into raw notes like this because they will spark lots of other information. So for example, executive dashboard for you isn't going to mean as much as it is for me because I know exactly what kind of executive dashboards I build. Segmentation is going to mean something different for me than for you because I know that's a segment that's going to be built in a certain application in the Zoho ecosystem. Okay, so I won't have to take as much detailed notes as you may have to because the level of detail shows that you need more detail in order to get something done. An expert usually needs less detail because they have a base of information they can tap into already for the notes that they're taking, okay? So what I wanted to show you here is an example. This isn't exactly what things should look like, but cascaded notes just gives you the best style of note-taking in order to get things out of your head and onto paper quickly. So just start writing things out. You can try your best to put this in chronological order, or you can put it in order of importance so the things at the top are the most important, Or I like to do chronological order because I'm thinking in terms of the customer journey, right? So when I'm taking notes, I'm trying to piece together the customer journey. So that's what I'd encourage you to do. Just start taking notes on the customer journey, the things that you want to do with your system. Start taking notes of what the process will look like. Again, try to think of it in terms of left to right, a process. And that would actually be the best criticism against this style of documentation is when you do a flowchart, you can show different decision trees. And so I encourage you not to get too crazy with decision trees and, well, what if this happens? What if this happens? Think about the 20% of your processes that's going to support 80% of the revenue coming into your organization. So all the yeses, right? What if things go the way that they are supposed to? And you might think to yourself, well, it never goes the way it's supposed to. Well, just think about it. What if someone goes on the website, then they subscribe to the newsletter, then they click to your booking page, then they book, then you have a sales call. Just think of the journey. If things were to go right, what does it look like? Most people don't even have that represented anywhere. So just start taking the notes on what your journey might look like, all the thoughts that you have related to your system. You're never going to get this perfect, but it is so much better to do this than to just wing it. So go ahead and do your best to take all the notes related to your system and your processes, and that will inform your system plan. Have you documented your processes in a detailed step-by-step format? If the answer to that question is no, or you don't know, then you need to watch this section on creating a system plan. If the answer to that question is yes, then you can skip this section of the video altogether. Now we're looking at a system plan example for a B2B organization. So I want you to imagine you're in a B2B organization, or in other words, you're selling something from a business to another business. Well, how are you going to clearly articulate and document your processes? You might try a flowchart. You might try a crazy screenshot by screenshot flow. All of those forms of documentation suck in comparison to what I'm about to show you, because this style of documentation is easy to create. It's easy to read. It's easy to get everyone on the same page. And it's the only style of documentation that's scalable and allows you to collect the amount of information necessary to inform a system action plan or implementation. Okay. So this is the best way to do it. It's who, will, what format. This is easy to read because this is how we think. Who's going to do what? So who would be prospect, will, shows, what, sales intent. Who, someone, will submit what? Contact us form, sends a text, what, sends an email, what, calls in. These are all the different whats, right? Here's another one. Who, technology or team member, will create a lead in Zoho CRM with the lead status sales ready. Okay, so this just gives us a much clearer picture on what's happening in a prospect. So initially, this process starts with a prospect showing sales intent. Well, let's be more detailed. Well, if a prospect submits a contact us form, sends a text inquiring about a service or product, these ones aren't as common, by the way, sends a text, sends an email initially, well, sends a text to initiate sales intent. But this happens, right? These are all different avenues in which someone can express sales intent. So you can do a listicle here. You may not have as many channels here. Don't worry about making this exhaustive initially. Just focus on the most important ones. For most people, B2B that I work with, it'd be a contact us form, but some people some prospects initiate a sales discussion via email. It's harder to track, but you can do it. And that's why I put this note here. That's what's great about this documentation. Note, for the best possible marketing tracking, if applicable, that's applicable to your organization, you need marketing tracking. Try to get people to submit a form on your website, as this will allow for UTM tracking. That's out of the scope for this video, UTM tracking, but that's just this gives you an example of where it's helpful to have a note, and then I can add a screenshot. So technology or team member. So what happens after someone actually expresses sales intent? Well, technology, so let's say they fill out a form, right? Then the form, you can create an integration that will push to your CRM. That's why I put technology will create a lead in Zoho CRM with the lead status sales ready. Or let's say they send an email. Okay, a prospect sends an email and says, hey, I noticed you are selling XYZ. I would love to have a discussion. Well, if someone sends you an email like that, you should create their lead inside of Zoho CRM, because a lead represents an unqualified opportunity to do business with someone. So, and I'm using Zoho as an example. If you're using Salesforce, HubSpot, or whatever system you're using, that's totally fine. That's just the example I'm using for this system plan. So technology will create a lead in Zoho CRM with a lead status sales ready. Okay. So now we know too, by the way, sneak peek into action plan. Now we know that we need to configure something in our technology in order to support this step of the process, okay? So here's a note. Lead statuses will include marketing ready, sales ready, reached, recycled, rejected. So I wanted to show you this in a Kanban view. So I took a screenshot. Now, if I was building the system plan for a client, I do the exact same thing, and you should do it too for your own organization. Unless you have a resource or you want to hire a resource or work with a professional to do this for you, you've got to do something like this for yourself. The advantage, by the way, of working with the subject matter expert here is they're going to have a lot more knowledge that they can give you on what statuses you may need to use for your journey, okay? They may be able to do that for you. I also have a journey map. I'll link to it in the description below that you can check out in order to see the different statuses and stages that I recommend that people use for their customer journey. The one that I'm linking below, it should be a B2B one, but we're also going to go over a B2C in this section of the video. But you can start to piece this together, right? Technology, this is the step. And then this is another step, Zoho CRM. So who, Zoho CRM, will automatically add a lead to a cadence where automatic communications will be sent to the prospect with a call to action to book a meeting. And then team member will set up a follow-up cadence inside of technology. Okay, so this is an action item for the team member, but we can start to see very clearly now the different steps that need to occur in the process. Then here's the next major step. Well, the prospect books an initial sales call, right? The reason we send communications to a sales ready lead is we want to get someone on a call. We want to get them to book with us so that we can further demonstrate our product or service and the reason why they need it. Okay, so someone will book the initial sales call. The reason I say someone here is that could be the prospect. It could be you booking on behalf of a prospective client. You're booking that call in Zoho Bookings, Google Calendar, Booking Link, Calendly, etc. Then technology will send a calendar invite. So let's say we are using Calendly. Calendly will automatically send the calendar invite to the attendees. Now, the thing that gets confusing here is what level of detail do you need to add? Err on the side of more detail, okay? You're never going to get to a point where this is perfectly documented, but you'll get to the point where anyone could reasonably look at this and start to get a feel for the prospect or for the process, right? And to see it through the lens of the customer journey makes the most sense because we've been customers. We go through different customer journeys all the time. So it makes the most sense to start with these bolded customer journeys and then expand all the additional steps that need to happen. So I could add 50 other bullet points here. The question you need to constantly ask yourself, is that worth it? And if you are like debating, oh, should I add this detail or not? Just add the detail. You can always remove it later. So I like to err on the side of more detail. Some people like to keep it as simple as possible. But eventually you have to get this level of detail if you're going to make it a reality. And that's what people don't understand when they're going through these processes. They don't know what they don't know. And so they forget to document they just don't know what details are important and they don't really know the details to put down to begin with. And that makes system development essentially impossible because it does require a lot of detail. And so again, that's why we do the inspiration section. The inspiration section gives you an idea of what you can do. That's why I create videos to give people inspiration on what they can do. And then this is about what you should do, right? So you have your coulds, which is the million things that you could do. And then you have your shoulds, which is why we're creating this document. We're saying this is how the process should be in order to support our customer journey. No two customer journeys are well, some customer journeys are the same, but not really. Every organization behaves so differently that it's difficult to say, copy and paste this customer journey throughout multiple businesses. So maybe you could say the customer journeys are the same, but the processes are certainly not the same, especially when people are using different tools. I digress. Here, prospect is qualified, okay? A team member deems the lead is qualified or unqualified. I have these different stages that can be used inside of a deals pipeline, et cetera, okay? So that is for a B2B flow. Let's talk B2C too. I'm gonna break this down with you. So here's our B2C system plan example. So first step here, first major step of the customer journey, a social media visitor clicks on a link to a website. Now this can happen in a lot of different ways. Think of you purchasing a product. Okay, you're scrolling through social media and you're looking through different posts. Some are paid posts, right? They're paid boost promoted posts or they're ads. And then you also have just organic posts from people that you follow. Okay, so that's you. So you're a social media visitor. You click on a link to a website. You click on this ad. You click on this. You click on this post, and it takes you to someone's website. Okay. Well, I would put here as a sub-step to support this that a team member will add UTM parameters to each call to action. Okay. Or in other words, would you put a link to your website on a post? You want to make sure that there's marketing tracking codes there. If this is relevant to you, if you're doing B2C, I don't know why this wouldn't be relevant to you. I'd highly encourage you to do this. I'd say that's a should. That way you can track if they purchase something, where on earth did they come from? What have your marketing efforts actually provided for that or actually produced that success? What are you going to attribute success to? Okay. So UTM is about attribution. There's different attribution models. That's outside of the scope of this video. So we're going to keep on track here with the next step. Social media user visits web page, right? So first they click on a link to the website. Here's a sub-step on what you can do to enhance that. And then the social media user visits the website. So they click and now you are visiting a web page. Okay. So then different technology is going to do different things. So who Zoho Sales IQ will what? Track visitor visit information. Okay. And then you can produce a report based on that collected information. So Zoho Analytics will what? Track visitors month to month. So now we can start being specific with what technology is going to do what. Now, this is where I talk about automating your business. These tools will do these things with or without you. And so this is where you can look through the different processes in your organization and say, we want to automate this. Previously, this was conducted by a person. Now we're going to replace this activity with AI or with a specific software tool. Okay. Zoho PageSense tracks visitor data. So this is where you can get more detailed on what technology will do in order to support a part of the customer journey. Okay. You may think customer journey isn't the most important thing to inform processes. This is the, I believe this is the best way to do this. If you have another way to do it, great. But this bulleted cascade format is going to be the best way for you to organize your thoughts and your plans for a system. Okay, website visitor subscribes to newsletter. Subscriber, so who subscriber form will create a contact record in the Zoho CRM subscriber column, right? So your subscriber form, maybe you use Zoho forms, maybe you use Shopify forms, whatever you're using, your subscriber form, that's the who will, and what are they going to do? Create a contact record. So that's technology, right? So you can be more specific with the who here. I put subscriber form because I don't know what subscriber form you're going to use. For me, it would be like a Zoho form. Okay. And then here's a note. And notes is nice. It's so nice to use notes for the documentation because that gives you a free for all. It's like just put whatever you feel like is necessary. Who what will format gives an idea of the narrative or the story of how the customer journey is supposed to go. And then notes are give you the ability to just put whatever's on your head onto paper that you feel is important. Notes give much needed context. Okay. And I just put notes here so that I instantly know, okay, this is something more of a more a freestyle of putting information that I need for the process. Okay. And then here's some who's, which it's kind of weird when I say who and you're thinking, well, you're putting technology, but I'm saying, what's the actor? What is the entity that's doing something? Is it technology? Is it a person? And if so, what will the technology or person be doing? Okay. And then finally, we got these last two parts of the process. And then here I put, the store. So if it's Shopify, we'll push the sales order from information to Zoho inventory. This is a B2C example, and really just is just meant to give you an idea. Okay. So this is a sales process for B2C and then B2B. Do you have to use these? No. I recommend that you do. I don't know actually why you'd want to invent this from scratch. Most B2B and B2C organizations are going to behave very, very similarly to what I've just shown you. But the idea that I'm trying to get across in this section of the video is that this is the most superior way that I've seen to document your system plan. Everyone hates creating SOPs, but just think about it as code for humans. If you want to scale your operations and you don't want to have to teach someone over and over and over again what to do, you can create an SOP. Now, SOPs are never going to be perfect, right? People will always have questions, but at least they'll have something to go off of. And if you create your system plan right, and you used the method that I showed you, then it becomes very straightforward to take that document and create an SOP off of it very quickly, okay? And in most cases, you don't even have to recreate an SOP. You can just copy and paste your system plan into an SOP. So I use Zoho Learn to house all of the SOPs in my organization. And what's nice about this, these are a couple example SOPs for you, is when I have new people that join the team, I can easily onboard them because I don't have to start from scratch every single time someone joins the team. I have this code for humans, which teaches them how something should be done. So I start with a video, and then I have the procedure underneath it, which would be like the system plan that we created, right? The system plan is really the people and the technology and what they're going to be doing, right? So this would be everything relevant to the people in the organization. But I don't mind including the technology, what the technology should be doing too, just so they know the whole picture. So what I'm saying is you can copy and paste elements of your system plan into an SOP, and then you can share these with people in your team. Two quick bonus things here for SOPs that I've learned just from doing this. So number one is if you start with a video asset, you can create an SOP on how to create an SOP. It seems a bit meta, but you can send it to people and then they'll be creating the SOPs for you. Everyone hates creating SOPs, but the nice thing is if you do the system plan initially, you already created it. So that makes your life so much easier. What is so painful to watch is people try to articulate their processes with like these really visual processes, but they don't have enough detail. So then they have to create SOPs anyways. And I'm like, what are we doing? We're just creating more and more work for ourselves instead of getting to the heart of it right off the bat. Okay. So as a bonus from having done the system plan, you've hit two birds with one stone, create an SOP off of it. And then in the future, create an SOP on how to create SOPs, just send them a video and then they'll know exactly what they need to do when watching the video to document it correctly. Again, the question is always going to be what level of detail is necessary? And the encouragement that I'd give is if you are to perform the task, how much detail would you need in order to perform it? The more trained someone is, the less detail they're going to need. The newer or less competent someone is, the more detail that they're going to need. So less detail for more competency, more detail for less competency, okay? So that is the thing I want you to take away from here is because you did all this hard work, right? And you've created this SOP, now you've created the system plan, you've also created your SOP. So have a list of SOPs somewhere that you can send to people. So instead of having to retrain everyone on the minutia of what to do, people have details on how to operate a system. Do you have an action plan? If the answer is no, or you don't know, then you need to watch this section, action plan. If the answer to that question is yes, then you can move on to the next section, execute. Now, the reason that we create an action plan is since we have a system plan, that's just on paper. How do we actually make the system a reality? That's the action plan. Those are not the same thing. So what we need to do is take a look at the system plan that we've created and start creating action items, okay? So I want you to ignore business function actors, business function free consultation. Let's just focus on these bullets right here, right? This would be your system plan, what it should generally look like, right? Here's the who, here's the will, here's the what. Okay, so it's in the same format that we discussed earlier. Now, when looking at these different steps, let's just go through them. Prospect, visits, the website, okay? Nothing you really got to do about that. Zoho Sales IQ will capture visitor tracking data. Well, the question is Zoho Sales IQ set up? No. So there's something we need to do. That's an action item for us to set up Zoho Sales IQ. So as you go through, you'll see different steps that require action items. And I want you to highlight those. So Zoho Sales IQ will capture visitor tracking data that needs to be set up. Zoho PageSense will capture visitor interaction data. And these are the coulds, right? You're highlighting the coulds, all the things you could do. But then this comes down to strategy. Strategy is about the should, right? There's a million coulds in business, but you have a finite amount of resources and energy that you can allocate to all the coulds. And that's where it comes down to shoulds. This is again why it's really important for you. If you don't have expertise, go to a subject matter expert. They're going to help you turn coulds into shoulds. And it's not just what you should do, it's how you should do it and in what order you should do it, right? And hopefully the order that you go in is the order of importance or impact that it's going to have on your organization. We're not going to go too far down the rabbit hole on that because it's not super important. Okay, so the first thing is Zoho Forms will push the submission data to Zoho CRM as a lead. So you can see we took this one, that was step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We took step 6 and we put it as the most important thing because we took what we could do to automate and we said this is the most important thing that we should automate. And these things are going to be on the back burner, okay? So Zoho CRM will get data enrichment information from Apollo. So we prioritize data enrichment and the Zoho Form submission pushing to Zoho CRM is the two highest important items. So again, the thing that we're trying to do here is it takes so much energy and effort to get configurations, to get automations off the ground, and to get systems implemented. So we want to be extremely practical and pragmatic about what we're choosing as shoulds. Okay, what should we do to get the system up and running? Because we can't do everything. That's the easy thing. It is so obvious to me when I'm working with a novice system builder when they're like, well, we just want to do everything. It's like, that's never going to happen. Someone who understands building systems is extremely practical and is extremely focused. This is how you laser focus. You don't have to document it the way that I'm doing. I think you should. You don't have to, but you should. But this is how your mind should behave when thinking about things, right? You always start with a list, then you highlight parts of that list so you can be a little more focused, and then you prioritize that list, and then you expand that list into action items, okay? So this is the last one that we went over, right? The shoulds. Now that you have your shoulds down, you've identified these two are the most impactful for us. Also, just another quick note, you may be thinking to yourself, well, all of them are impactful. We have to have all of it. I would argue that you don't. It depends on your list. I'd have to take a look at it if I was to be more clear. The point here is if you don't need every single step, then what steps would you consider must-haves, right? This is, there's a way of looking at requirements and action items called Moscow. It's must-haves, should-haves, could-haves, and then won't-haves. So this is your must-haves. Like we have to have these two things in order for the process to work at all, okay? And then once you have your must-haves or your top shoulds, you take those and then you create an action plan. That's what you might refer to as a solution. You could also call this an action plan. So Drew will integrate Zoho Forms with Zoho CRM. Access Zoho Forms, go to the integration section, integrate Zoho Forms with Zoho CRM, configure field mapping, add value manually to field. So this is where you can get really detailed, right? And this would go into your work management system. So Zoho Projects, Monday.com, Asana, whatever you're using, this is what becomes the action items, okay? But you see the way that we did all this, right? Inspiration informs the raw notes that you take. Raw notes inform the system plan. System plan will inform the action plan, but they have to come from somewhere where it just feels like there's no rhyme or reason. And so the most logical way to do this, that's practical and actually works in the real world, is the strategy that I'm showing you. And so everything draws back to the system plan, to the raw notes, then to the inspiration in a logical way. Okay, so you got solution, it's who's going to do what, then you have these sub steps as well, okay? Then you have some considerations. Solution design is time intensive. We're creating the action plan. I refer to it solution design is time intensive and the execution is labor intensive. So it's a game of strategy, infinite options, finite resources. It's how you're going to allocate finite resources to infinite options, okay? So simple automation can come with an action plan out of the gate. The more advanced in automation, the more steps you're going to want to include here. Because again, an expert's going to say, Drew will integrate Zoho Forms with Zoho CRM. If that was my action item, I know exactly what to do. But someone who's not as competent is going to need more steps. So that's the advantage. This is really where the advantage of having a subject matter expert comes into play, because someone who has expertise doesn't need to have it spelled out for them. A novice is going to have everything spelled out for them. So you're just saving your time by going to an expert. That's the case that I'd make for an expert. And then you have here's the other should, right? Top should, and you can see here's some requirements, right? So since this is more advanced, I also included requirements, which is Zoho must trigger the automation. And this is the reason that I outline this for an action item. I don't want to overwhelm you. There's so much information here. I know this can be overwhelming, but requirements is a way for you not to have to spell out exactly what to do, but you could hand this to a software engineer or someone who's an expert and say, hey, I don't know all the steps that need to be taken here, but I know that Zoho must trigger the automation. I know that Zoho must fetch this company name, LinkedIn URL title, and I know that Zoho must update the creative. Those are the things I know. And so if it checks those boxes, let's take the emotion out of it. If we can check those boxes, I'm going to be happy with it. And so this is a list that you can create. Instead of creating the exact action items, you can just list the requirements. And then you can send the requirements to a subject matter expert, okay? And this is the best way to go about it. So first, it would be to analyze the process or articulate the process. Second would be to identify opportunities for automation, or really it's to identify where you need to act or create action items. And then number 3 would be to prioritize these. The argument that I'm making here with the prioritization section is that not all of these action items are equal. Some are more valuable to the organization for us to get done than others. So which are more valuable? Okay. And then it's really the should for order. So not only what should we prioritize, but what order should we act to configure these steps of our system plan. And then number 4 would be, okay, now that we know what we should focus on, what are we going to do about it to actually take this system and make it real, take it to reality? How are we going to do that? Well, we have to have an action plan step by step, or if it's a little complicated and we just know the requirements, we want to hand it off to someone who's an expert in configuring systems, or then we can send this over to them. We can just send them requirements, and then they can design a further action plan from there. But at least they'll have something to guide them, and they'll know the end goal, which would be the solution. And the requirements are the different things they need to check off. So you can see how all this documentation kind of intertwines with each other. It's just a list within a list within a list. And that's how you start. Get inspiration to create your initial list, and then you use the other steps of the strategy to come up with an action plan. Do you have an action plan? If the answer to that question is yes, then it's time to execute. There's no better way to execute an action plan than to use a work management tool. We use Zoho Projects, but you can use Trello, Asana, whatever you'd like. But this is where rubber meets the road. If you don't organize the action plan clearly and have the level of detail required, then your system's never going to be built. And I know all of this is really painful. I know it's painful to be detailed, but that's because this is what's difficult. If it was easy to have the level of detail required to build systems, everyone would have a great system. And let me tell you, 99.9999% of organizations are in a chaotic mess, and they are not systemized because they fail to provide the level of clarity necessary to build a system. And so that's the first thing I want to hit on here. Before you even go to project management, you have to understand this principle. If you hand an action item such as this ensure workflow rule to add purchase hours from invoice to accounts modules working correctly, in order for you to pass an action item, any action item off to somebody, they either have to be extremely, they have to have an extreme amount of clarity because they're an expert, so they can infer based on what you said in one sentence. They can just infer on what you're trying to accomplish. We also use descriptions to give further clarity. So that's the first thing. You either have to be working with an expert because they have the clarity already, or you have to front load that clarity in a description for someone who's less competent. So this is my case for you. If you value your time, if you prioritize your time over your money, then you're going to want to use your money, your capital, to work with a subject matter expert. If you prioritize your capital over your time, then you're going to want to use all of your time to become an expert. And you might not have the time to become an expert. And then again, that would be my first case. Go find an expert to do this for you. This stuff is very tedious. It's very time intensive, but it is worth it. When you systemize your business, you can take the chaos, the guesswork, and the confusion out of your business, and you can truly make it into a system. You can make your business work for you instead of you having to work for your system. But the best way to keep track of the execution so you can see the progress of your system being developed is by going through these, by creating action items for all the work that you need to get done, and by tracking it, having different statuses to track where it is at in the process of completing tasks.